Is Jaylen Brown going to be traded? Are the Celtics going to sign him to an extension? Or is everything just going to continue to be smoke and mirrors for the next few weeks? Because the last few days have been absolutely and utterly confusing. I'm your boy, Adam Taylor, host of the Celtics Chronicle newsletter and podcast. I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Mike Weber. What's poppin', Mike?
What's good, my man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm just trying to figure out this whole Jaylen stuff, right? So for anyone that hasn't been following along, which I'm sure is like 0.0001% of y'all, Brown and the Celtics are in this weird spot right now. So it all began with T-Mac coming out, and we could say it began when, I'd say it would start with T-Mac. It all came out when T-Mac was on a podcast and said, Jaylen Brown is frustrated with the Celtics right now, the organization, no one individually, just the organization, and he alluded to just Jaylen not being appreciated for what he does, blah, 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 blah. Brandon goes on a live stream and he's, no, I want to stay in Boston for as long as they'll have me. He repeated that one line a few times, as long as they'll have me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have all the my favorite season so far talk as well, where people are taking that as if to be like, the 1 year you're your number one option on the team, the 1 year without Jason Tatum is the same year that you get bounced in the first round after dropping a 3-1 lead, and that's your favorite. So there's a lot going on and a lot to unpack, where some people think this is the prerequisite to Brown being moved on. Some people think that maybe there's been conversations behind the scenes, and that's why I would stay in Boston for the next 10 years. Do you know what I mean? And he's really driven on that. So I think this episode is going to be a really good kind of jumping point to discuss whether Brown's going to stick around, whether the Celtics would be wise to even explore trades or anything from that. So I think the first thing we need to do, Mike, is just get your opinion.
Yeah, words matter, right? Let's keep it 100. Words matter. And when T-Mac went and dittoed what Jaylen was feeling about the referees, maybe part of the super fan of me was like, yeah, that's right. We didn't get calls that series, even though the analyst in me, the person who really watches the game differently, knows it's not the reason why the Celtics lost the game, right? And so for the next thing to come out, for him to mention that Jaylen wasn't necessarily happy and things like that was a little scary. And then you have obviously Brad's call the next day where he had to respond. It was like one of the very earlier questions about Jaylen. And even Brad was a little dodgy. He didn't necessarily say anything specific like, oh yeah, Jaylen Brown's got to be a Celtic for life. Jaylen, it just said, we're good. Basically, me and Jaylen are good. He seems happy. We're fine. And then for Jaylen to have to come back, and he did say he was bothered and upset that he even had to address it, and upset because he had a tremendous amount of respect for Brad. But once again, it's the whole words matter. It's, I'm going to be a Celtic as long as they'll have me, right? Which kind of sounds like a relationship that's definitely on the, I don't know the term, definitely dangerously on the edge of possibly not going well. And everybody's just trying to protect their brand or just keep it under wraps. And the other thing is, I think this is really important, which is Brad doesn't show his cards. He just doesn't. You got to try to read between the lines the best you can, but he's like a Jedi, man, when it comes to press conferences. So with Jaylen, I'm not really sure where it is. I hope it's amicable regardless of what happens. But I think if you're the Celtics, if it is a parting of ways, it's the ultimate best thing to have the perception to be that everything's great too, because you're going to get maximum value if you do decide to trade him.
That's a really key point, right? Teams will smell blood in the water. And as soon as a guy requests a trade, the value on what you can get back decreases exponentially day by day. I think that Windhorst has been one of the best guys to follow along with this. He's been one of the more even-keeled reporters on this whole situation. He went on to Rich Eison's show a day or two ago now, and he was very much like, look, if Jaylen Brown is going to be with the Celtics beyond this season, then one of the easiest ways to see that happening is if he signs this contract extension, right? So the contract extension will be 2 years, $141.9 million, roughly $70 million a year at the end. Brown currently has 3 seasons left on this current deal, which rises incrementally. I think it ends on around 62 million on that final year. So by then, Brown's 29 now, so he'll be like 32 at the end of that deal. The extension would then be paying him $70 million a year at 33, 34. Now, this is a guy that's had knee tendinopathy in both knees. He misses games because of like knee tendinopathy and swollen knees. He's very explosive. He uses his explosiveness, his athleticism, blah, 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 to get to his spots and to be his man. Do you want to commit $141 million to a player 4 years from now at the back end, if not after his prime? And if you don't, how's Jaylen going to feel about that?
Right.
And like, I think that's really a key point here, right? Brown is 29 already. He'll be 30 midway through or towards the end of next season. And when you're looking at this from a standpoint of, well, there's probably 2 to 3 years of his prime left right now. That's the duration of this deal. Then you're tacking on 70 million a year for 2 more seasons after that. If the Celtics don't feel comfortable there, that's when Windhorst is saying, has alluded to, he didn't say it outright, but he alluded to maybe the Celtics or Brown start looking elsewhere in the league for a team that might be willing to pay him. But 70 million for a 33, 34-year-old is a lot of money.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that being a big sum of money. However, I do think that this is like the NBA's subtle way of allowing guys to request a trade. If the Celtics go to Jaylen, because I think the conversation starts with, "Hey, Jaylen, we heard you say you could play another 10 years here. You'd be happy with that. Are you going to sign this extension? We offer it to you." And if he pauses, takes a beat, shows any hesitation, then I think we end up in a situation that would be not too far off from where Giannis is in Milwaukee right now, right? And I do think it's a tough question. I do want to give Jaylen credit. Obviously, he's an athlete. He's explosive. But he's also been somebody, since he's been in the league, who traditionally has gotten a little bit better every single season. So he deserves credit for that.
The problem is that incremental improvement is eventually going to stop, and then we start going back down, right? Because that's just the way an NBA career works. You improve, then time slowly catches up with you unless your name's LeBron James, and then you slowly start going back down. And I think, again, Windhorst had a really good point, and this time it was on the Get Up. I think it was today or yesterday, where he was like, if Brown doesn't get offered that contract, or maybe he might not, and that's where the frustration's coming from, then we could see them move there. But it's also if Brown, and this is what really struck me when Windy said it, if Brown does sign that contract, not only is he not getting traded this season, but he's probably not getting traded, period, because teams don't want to be taking on 5 years of like $250 million for a guy already in his 30s. And that was a really good point. So the Celtics are in a position where it's not only do we need to make a decision on whether we trade Brown now, but we also need to make a decision on whether paying him the extension is going to be smart business for us because of how difficult it would be to trade him for a valuable return in a few years if we do decide to do that. And I think that's a really hard line to have to navigate because Brown's great and he's coming off a career year. And the argument is for trading him that his trade value is never going to be higher than what it is right now.
It's the pinnacle right now for sure.
If you tack on another 141 million to that contract,
he's less attractive. Yeah.
You're just getting diminishing returns left, right, and center. And again, like you don't know what next season holds or the year after. Is he going to be the same player? Could he get hurt? There's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. And I think when you see what happened to Tatum, now obviously he came back and was just exceptional. But as a franchise, that probably makes you sit back and think about tacking on 2 extra years to a guy that is built around athleticism. So I am sitting here now just questioning whether or not we do see Brown get traded or at least get floated, because this extension to me is a really big sticking point. Because quite frankly, I'm not sure if I was Brad that I'd be willing to offer that.
It's a tough conversation too, because he's definitely a very proud person. Jaylen's a very proud person. And I do think Brad does not advertise anything. So I know we're going to talk about Giannis probably all summer. It's going to be a conversation. If we can't sit here and say, oh, Jaylen Brown is going to be diminishing returns and maybe he's hit his peak and now he's going to start to go downward, and then turn around and say, yeah, let's trade him for Giannis. To me, I think if it's floated out there and we do move on for Jaylen Brown, it's going to be somebody we didn't expect. Brad is not going to trade him somebody who's not going to make the team better long term. There were one of those nuggets of information that I held on to the other afternoon when he spoke was Brad said, we're looking to be great short term, but also not at the disposal of the future of the team. And I think that's, if there's ever a person who exemplifies that quandary right now, that question that they're facing, it's Jaylen. Jaylen epitomizes that for sure.
The one thing that I'm really leaning towards here is we're in an era now where guys at 35 are still playing elite basketball. Now, obviously, that's only a handful of guys. It just feels like there's more. Horford, LeBron, Kevin Durant,
Uncle
Steph
Jeff.
Curry. What do all of these guys have in common other than Jeff Green? What do all of these guys have in common? They're future Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And they're the best of the best. Now, do we put Jaylen Brown in, or Jimmy Butler as well? Do we put Jaylen Brown in or around that tier? Because if we do, and he stays healthy, there's a good chance that he's still an all-star caliber guy at the end of his extension. And that is really difficult to mentally navigate because when you're growing up our age, careers started to tail off at 34. By 36, unless you were just Michael Jordan or Larry Bird or someone along those lines, you weren't going to be playing deep into your 30s. You weren't going to be
Yeah.
the same player. You might play till you're 40, but you're not the guy you were at 30.
No.
Very few can do that.
Yeah.
Brown's in exceptional shape. And that is also the progression in sports science, the progression in the way that players take care of their bodies and the longevity you're having on careers now. Somehow, some way, Kyle Lowry's still on an NBA roster, right? Like the longevity is there at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So that is also kind of a decision that the Celtics need to make. But as you said, Brad noted, like we're trying to be competitive now, but not at the expense of the future. Is $141 million part of the expense of the future? Is he alluding to something there? Now, we're grasping at straws if we're being quite honest. There's a lot of space between what Brad said and what we're trying to grasp at right now.
Yeah.
But the fact remains that there's a hard decision to be made, and either Jaylen Brown is going to get paid and the Celtics have to hope like hell that everything works out, or they're going to decide not to give him the extension, and there's a disconnect. And that disconnect only gets bigger if you try, and I'm saying try because I don't believe this part to be true, but if you try and inject the Jason Tatum of it all, the second option of it all,
Yeah. Everybody puts it. That's been the narrative since the two of them been together, especially here in Boston. It's just these guys. Do they really like each other? Are they best friends? Can they play together? It's been like a nonstop thing, and I do think Jalen's quick to respond to the respect of Brad definitely dampens a little bit of those embers in regards to okay, things are really bad. Either he's very intelligent and really smart with PR, I'm sure too, and I respect the way he handled it. I think the biggest challenge as a fan of the team and somebody who was upset about losing that series wasn't so much that he said it was his favorite season. It was just, man, I wish he would have taken a beat. Just taken a beat. Take a week because I wanted to go online live the other night after the game and just scream and yell and shout and bitch and moan. And I wasn't the one getting fouled or losing or missing shots. So I hope that the solution is amicable regardless. I do think LeBron obviously is one and only specimen. He puts $1 million into his body a year. It's on record as being a thing. Jaylen seems, I'm not there with him in the offseason, but Jaylen seems to certainly be invested in sports science, in nutrition. He's literally built like a Marvel superhero himself. And even LeBron has commented about Jaylen Brown's work ethic. And even Brad has talked about how the most imperative trademark or part of a player in this team and the organization is the commitment to hard work and loving basketball. And both Jays have that for sure.
The other thing to point out, and I want everybody, if you haven't watched this interview that I'm about to reference, it's on the channel a few episodes back. About 2 months ago, we had Evan Turner on the show. It's a short interview, about 15 minutes. But one thing he noted was, and this is tying back into the Tatum thing, and then I'll address the Brown kind of workout videos. But one thing Turner noted was, yeah, Brown and Tatum get on. Like, they're genuinely friends. So that narrative just keeps coming up. You've got a guy that's been in the locker room with both of them as a player and a development coach.
Yeah.
If anybody's going to know how close those two guys are, I'm trusting whatever Turner says. On the flip side of that, that was before this season. And I saw a tweet earlier that was Bill Simmons from a Bill Simmons quote from his podcast. And if anyone's a Wire fan, they'll kind of get it. And I really feel like I need to find it again so I don't butcher it. So if everyone just gives me, but it was along the lines of, it's how Jaylen Brown now is how Avon felt when he came out of prison and Stringer Bell had a taste of. So Tatum now is Avon and Brown is Stringer Bell, and Stringer Bell had a taste of running that shit.
Yeah, I've been holding
and
it down.
That hits because I can visualize that.
Yeah, man.
And I think that saying that Tatum and Brown get on well from a guy that's been around now is completely not believable. He has the experiences of being in the room with these guys that none of us do to be able to put that to bed. The difference is Brown got to lead a team for a year and now he probably feels a different type of way. And that's the problem. I do think that them two get on well, though. I think that it's just a blown out narrative that doesn't have many legs to stand on. If they didn't like each other, Jaylen Brown wouldn't be going into his 30th with his entire career in Boston. He would have forced his way out by now.
And they're both very polished. Let's be real. Both of these kids, they're kids to me. They're much younger than me, but like they've been brands since day one. I think JT maybe a little bit sooner was a little bit more savvy to that, But I think both of them understand the business aspect of basketball as well, whether it's Jaylen with the 741 stuff, the Oakley sponsorships, a lot of the stuff he's gotten into. Obviously, Tatum's a Jordan guy and a bunch of other stuff too. So I think they're both cognizant of like perception and handling things the right way. They definitely have been supported and raised correctly by people. They definitely handled themselves well, which is what I think maybe took people back. I love the rawness of Jaylen. He's definitely a little bit more unfiltered than JT. Definitely more of a character, is outspoken. And that's not saying one way is right or wrong. There's that saying about man of few words, but it was kind of cool to see Jaylen peel back a layer and show his frustration. Obviously, I didn't think the timing of some of his things was ideal, but like you said, like we are grasping at straws. And I think there's only really three people that really know really what's going to happen. And that's God, Brad Stevens, and Jaylen Brown.
The question is, one, Jaylen Brown is incredibly smart. He would have known what he was saying and how it could potentially be perceived. And he's doubled down on this favorite season narrative
Yeah.
for multiple times through the season. And as you said, the timing of the last one was off.
Yeah.
And what I will say is he did go back on live on Wednesday and cleared this up. He explained, look, it's my favorite season because of the development, the camaraderie, the way we overcame expectations. Yeah, everything that came into it. He was very well articulate in explaining why it was his favorite season. The problem is the damage had already been done in the sense that he'd already alienated a group of fans that there is this kind of split where you're either a Tatum fan or a Brown fan online, especially on Twitter. It's very much a little bit of a tribalistic WWE, AEW type of vibe.
It's a real thing. It's like those things.
And if you say that your favorite season is the one you lost 3-1 and now ESPN are running with it and Jaylen Brown's got this little back and forth going with Stephen A, it's making people pick a side. It's people are picking sides, and Jaylen might not have expected the backlash to go to this level, right? But sometimes if you drop an ember on dry grass, you don't control how far the flames spread. And this is exactly where we are right now.
Yeah.
So I do think that Brown is incredibly intelligent. He understands what weight his words carry. He's used his voice for many good things over the years, especially like speaking out. He's also a fan of boxing. And I wonder whether right now we're just being hit with light jabs for timing until we get hit with that haymaker I want out. You know what I mean? Or he slips it when the extension comes. There's a lot going on. The one thing I'm really disappointed by is we're less than a week since they got eliminated and Jaylen Brown has been the number one story the entire time. And that's not ideal when you're hoping and looking around for different ways for the Celtics to. Oh, just a breaking news here. Sorry. League sources confirm that Celtics alternative governor Aditya Mittal and minority owner CEO Wick Reisbeck are preparing a bid to buy the Seahawks.
Interesting. I know that's been going on for a long time about how that's going to go down with Paul Allen. He's passing away and his ex-wife, his widow owning it. That's cool. I hope Wick gets what he wants, or Wick's dad, maybe. I don't know how it works.
Anyway, back to this Jaylen Brown discussion. I think that quick shout out to the Celtics guys who did buy the Seahawks. Who knows, maybe we'll get some crossover merch. I like it when there's some crossover stuff.
Cool.
Back to this Jaylen Brown. We are going to get peppered with trade talks for a while, and that means a lot of proposed trades, mock trades. I saw one over on 98.5 yesterday where they went from realistic in terms of like Giannis to hopeful, which was Bam, to Fantasyland, which was Stephen Curry. And we're going to see them because fans eat this shit up. It's not, no one, if you're preferencing the trade as a Fantasyland trade, then I'm completely fine with it being wild because at least you're being honest. You're not being like, this could happen. People eat that shit up. It's fun to think about. This is what the off season's for.
Yeah, man.
But with the way everything's been Jaylen, and I was hoping it was going to be that everyone turns their attention to the draft, who could fall. And I've seen people be like, the Celtics aren't going to get anyone useful this late in the draft. I'm not looking at Baylor Scheinman.
Look at Hugo.
Look at Hugo. Brad Stevens has a really good knack for finding dudes late in the draft, and this is a deep class.
It is.
I was hoping that. Now, I don't think this is going to be Jaylen Brown's tour for a long time. I'm hoping it dies down, assuming that he decides not to go back on record and be like, this is my favorite season of all time, even if I win 5 more championships. If he did that, then, he's asking for the blowback. But overall, look, I think that the narrative surrounding the contract extension is the right narrative to have. It all falls down to whether the Celtics want to pay and how Brown reacts if they choose not to.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the be all and end all of this discussion. Again, it just sucks that this is the conversation we're having so close after a season where he was exceptional came to an abrupt closing. That's the
Having
stuff
said
you
that,
can't.
I wouldn't mind if he asked us to go on his Twitch stream with him. We could talk to him about it again if he wants to talk.
Yeah, that'd be fun, right? I'm not flying all the way over to Boston. I think
man,
those guys are shout out GRD and everyone that were there.
Yeah,
I know
that was
those
cool.
guys had a few minutes each of him, and if I make a transatlantic trip and I get 2 minutes on a live stream, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
a bit sad.
Well, you get a
But if
place
you
to
make-
stay here. You just gotta.
Unless Brian's sending the private plane, then
I'll
I'm
take a
all
set
in.
of 741s.
Yeah, but shout out to GRD and
Yeah,
to
man.
everyone else that was on that show.
Hell yeah.
With that being said, everybody, let us know. Do you think Jaylen signs that extension? Does he not? Will he be back? Will he not? Should the Celtics trade him? And if so, who for? Let's keep it realistic, though. Mike, anything you want to add?
No, man, listen, the band's got a lot going on. I'll be at Bally's in Lincoln, Rhode Island. If you want to see a great band, Saturday night. And the following Friday at Mohegan Sun, home of the Sun. Actually, the Connecticut Sun are playing the Las Vegas Aces that same night that I'm playing at the casino. So if any of the WNBA stars want to pop by and say hi to After School Special, I'm your guy.
We got you. All right, everybody, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you're looking for the latest Celtics Chronicle newsletter. Links in the description. Go show some love over there too. Until next time, deuces.